BeTheTalk, episode 301, featuring Sarah Hernholm. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Sarah Hernholm. Sarah, are you ready to talk?
I'm ready to talk.
Sarah Hernholm is an educator, entrepreneur, speaker, teen advocate, and committed to doing whatever it takes to make the world a better place. Her hashtag is #DoWit. Sarah Hernholm, welcome to the talk.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for making the time to have me.
So your talk is called 11 Tips for Doing Wit.
You mean the talk that I've given?
The talk that you've given. Actually, I'm noticing now that for whatever reason, I don't have that on my notes. So just tell me what that is. And all. What was? Tell you.
So I've had the honor of doing 3 TEDx talks. So I've had.
That's why we don't have it. Okay, so you 3 times TEDx speaker. Give us the lowdown.
I've had so one of them is on unique expression, bringing your unique. Your authentic self-expression to the world. Another one is on the power of full circle moments. And the other one was on placing periods and placing commas instead of periods.
And I saw the one from victim to victor. That's the one.
That's that's the full circle one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the notes that I have are from victim to victor. And I love the linguistic switch that you do. You say, hey, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening? No, you switch the 2 to a 4. Why is this happening for me? And no matter what happened to you, what kind of, petty to serious thing that happened in junior high or high school, or you got called a narc at one point, which was one of the worst things in the 80s and 90s that one could be told in school, a narc. And it wasn't even true for you, but you had the attitude, hey, why is this happening for me? What could possibly good happen from being called a narc?
Well, let's be really honest here. That was something that I was able to process much later in life. As a 14-year-old at boarding school being called a name that wasn't true, I didn't have the emotional intelligence at the time to say, oh, I wonder why this is happening for me. No, I was pretty devastated by that level of bullying. It's just that what I've realized in life is the older you get, it doesn't mean that the bullying stops. It just manifests itself differently. The self-doubt doesn't go away when you hit 30 years old. I mean, all these kind of things that when you're a young person, you feel like eventually it'll all make sense and everything will just come together and these great little puzzle pieces will create this beautiful picture. I just don't think that's what life really is. I think it can be very messy and it doesn't always fit. But if you choose to reframe how you're processing what's happening, I feel like that's what was the biggest thing for me that made the biggest impact on me was just the reframing of instead of wallowing and why is this happening to me, when I even switch the language to why is this happening for me, my body even opens up more and my mind opens up more. And I like to feel powerful. I would rather feel powerful than weak. And so I look, and plus I'm inspiring the next generation of leaders in the work that I do. Mm-hmm. So that's the reframe. And, but that doesn't, these talks come from a lot of pain. You can't really inspire people unless you've kind of gone through some things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I love that, I mean, we're talking about empowerment here, and we need to learn how to coach ourselves and reframe and choose to be present, choose to be empowered, and choose to baby step forward and get past all of our little stuff that we all have. I love, I took this note from you. You say that worry gives the illusion of accomplishment and getting things done when all you're really doing is just burning your energy and time. I just thought that was just so classic for all of us, especially task-focused people that like to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm. I also think of the expression that worrying is ingratitude in advance. So you're already being
ingratitude in advance.
Yeah, ingratitude in advance.
Oh, that's
so you're
great.
already feeling ungrateful, like that things aren't going to work out and that things aren't really going to be okay. Again, these are all things I've had to teach myself and learn. And I think that there's some people where the worrying gene they don't really have it as much. And then there's some of us that it comes in extra hot and it can be very distracting. And it's just, I had one of my talks, the first talk I did, I talked about my tendency to ruminate and the tips that I've used to try to stop, to get out of that. So I think everybody has something. I think what we could do better at as humans is to remind each other that you're not alone in that. And that if you do feel this way, there are some tips and tools that you can use, and that nobody has it figured out.
Well, Talk Universe, if you'll let me indulge for a moment, I need to let Sarah know that she's not alone in being a ruminator, and I want to get a tip about how she stopped ruminating, because I think I might just suffer for the same thing. Maybe you do too.
Well, I think, and I'll go back to this. If you hang out with me enough, you'll see that this is my default. Gratitude is my default. Ruminating is, again, a form of like worry and concern. And I really try to combat that with gratitude. I also remind myself, I do a call to action of what's the next best thing you could do right now? What's like one step you could take? Not like trying to figure out the whole thing, but just one action step.
By ruminate, do you mean overthinking? Do you mean kind of pinwheeling in your mind? Because I definitely do that. I've had people tell me I tend to do that.
I mean, I just like all of a sudden will be down this like rabbit hole. And the thing that will happen is it'll start happening when I'm even in conversation with somebody about something totally different. My mind starts worrying about something else. So I'm not even present to where I want to be. And so I have to have really quick tips to get myself back in. And it comes like, and when I'm in those situations and it's happening in real time with somebody that I'm in conversation with, I will start asking them questions about themselves, right? Like trying to get myself back into the present moment. So I think, it's all okay, but it's helpful to have quick tips to help you be your best self.
Sarah, tell me about the work that you do. I believe it's with youth and empowerment and mentoring and that kind of thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but tell us a little bit more about the kind of work that you're doing, how you got started serving in that way.
So the name of the company is WIT, Whatever It Takes. And we're an organization that focuses on developing emotional intelligence and entrepreneurship and community engagement within teenagers. And we do that in a couple different ways. We do that by providing a college credit course they can take in high school, where they can actually learn how to launch a business. They actually do launch a business in high school while earning college credit. And then we also provide one-day hackathons around the country where they can come for one day, activate that entrepreneurial mindset, come up with solutions to real problems, and then pitch those solutions to city officials and entrepreneurs and leaders.
I love it. And that's very similar to what do we have? We had a startup weekend at the local business incubator. It sounds like a very similar thing, only you start them younger and teach them that instead of just memorizing facts, they need to hit the street with some possible solutions, find out what sticks, validate, and then get people to actually spend a little bit of money perhaps, and then scale the thing out. Is that basically the idea?
I want people to start realizing that they can be part of the solution and to be solution oriented, not problem focused. And I feel like with teenagers, they just don't have a lot of spaces where they get to use their voice freely. So what we say is, okay, you're complaining about some stuff. Cool. So let's do something about it. And I just feel very strongly that when teens have access to the rooms and the platforms in the quote real world, they are more plugged into their life. School is not that fabulous in the United States. We could do a lot better in our school system. And until it gets better, we will keep running programming that allows them to learn in the way of applying skills in the real world, because that's how people learn the most. I am a former teacher, so I speak with a that gives me some street cred.
Yeah, well, and I can't help but to bring in episode 150, Dr. Michael Hines, who's a school superintendent, and he's really kind of leading a charge right now to help the whole child and the whole teenager with social intelligence, emotional intelligence, physical intelligence, and not teach for the test anymore. So he's taken a really bold stance about that. What are your thoughts about the emotional, the social skills that we may be losing, as a former teacher and who's still teaching and working in a less traditional way, maybe more effective way? What are your thoughts about all the underdeveloped parts that we're missing as we're teaching for tests all over the place?
Well, I think we're setting our youth up to fail. And it frustrates me because I don't understand how adults don't realize that. I feel like they're just choosing to be ignorant, because there's no way that as a educated human being, adult, that you could ever possibly think that teaching a group of people to be able to take a test is the way to help them be successful in the real world. And then adults get really grumpy that what's coming into the workforce are people that don't have a lot of hustle, don't have a lot of grit, don't have a lot of fortitude, and aren't comfortable with failing. It's like, well, why would they be comfortable with failing? You told them that failing was wrong.
Not allowed to get under a 90 on that standardized test.
Yeah. And that you taught them that taking risks could result in you not getting into the college that's supposed to be helping you have the perfect life. Because I mean, it so blows my mind that adults are still preaching that getting into the right school will give you a great life. We all know that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, especially after, our generation is kind of the tail end of, the internet, and all of this stuff is here, and we're kind of not prepared. And then we're having our own kids and perpetuating the whole, I don't know if it's political. I don't know if it's just employee thinking or the conditioning of the Industrial Revolution from 150 years ago. I don't know if it's nostalgia. But we gotta do something. We need to look at this.
We do better. We know better, so we should do better. There are no statistics that show that 3 hours of homework is beneficial, that rote testing results in really well-developed, emotionally intelligent humans. Like, there's no data. So just stop.
Pretty crazy. We are enjoying our conversation, pretty lively conversation with Sarah Hernholm. Her talk, the one that we were talking about, is From Victim to Victor. And we've been just really enjoying all this. We have more to come, and we're going to pivot over to you in a moment here, Talk Universe, to talk about the preparation and performance of her three recent talks in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back. It's time for the Blitz Round with three-time TEDx speaker Sarah Hernholm. Sarah, I'm going to ask you a series of either-or questions related to the prep and performance of your three recent TEDx talks. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Were you invited to speak, or did you apply, or both?
Invited.
Awesome. Okay. Are you a memorizer, improviser, or blender?
Blender.
How does that work for you?
Well, I find that I was a theater major in college, so I definitely know how to memorize lines. But I think it's also really important to not come off rote and fully memorized. And I think it's really important to to be present, in the moment when you're talking, because things happen. I mean, I've had some interesting things happen when I've given these talks. I blend, but I think for the most part, I really value the platform of TED, and TED really doesn't want you to be just improvising on the fly. They want something really solid and well thought out. So honoring that for that platform, I blend, but I would probably lean more towards memorized.
Yeah. And I love talking with people with theater experience, because when you say blend, you really mean memorized in the moment, and not stodgy and calculated, but it's really closer to what the rest of us would call, memorized or memorized. So it's really interesting because when an actor or performing artist says blended, a lot of times looks more like memorized, and you have that respect, that healthy respect for, what either the desire of the composer, if you're a performing artist, or the person who was the screenwriter or the script writer, or in our case, the curators and the organizers of the event that were invited to be a part of. So my next question, what was one of the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that ever happened to you on the TEDx stage?
Well, I've got two. So one would be, there was a tech issue during one of my talks.
Always a tech issue. Yeah.
There were some slides behind me, and then the slides didn't go, or they skipped ahead too many. And because I'm a very in the moment present speaker, I work very hard to be that way. I just said, well, let's just get it back on track and we'll jump back in and we'll make it work. I didn't pretend that it wasn't happening because that actually makes it more awkward for the audience. But it's it's online. It's online for people to see, and it's just better to own it in the moment and get it back on track.
They didn't edit that piece out?
No, I think it's still
in there
because it's part of the time.
They didn't edit that piece out. Hey, folks, we're going to just wait for the slides to catch up. They didn't edit that out, They didn't edit that out. There's probably some real life interest in that. The other thing that happened, one of the talks that I gave, I was able to give, it's the one that you saw in Texas. That was in Texas. And I hung out in the green room with the teenagers because it was a teen focused event. And I really love hanging out with teenagers. That's the focus of the work that I do. And I met a teen who actually helped me bring my company to Austin. So now we have a pretty strong presence in Austin, Texas. And that's the magic of what can happen in a green room. And it's the magic of what can happen when you get outside yourself. There's a big temptation. I see this a lot when I go to speaking engagements and I'm hired to speak. The speakers are very self-focused. I think that comes from a sense of just being very nervous. But that's very egocentric. So a great way to get comfortable before you go out on stage or when you're at an event that you're speaking at is to just really be more focused on expressing than impressing. And I enjoyed being backstage and just being really grateful to the teens that I put on the event. And then as a result, wonderful things happened for my business. Meanwhile, other adults were sitting in the corner kind of freaked out, and that's fine. Everybody gets their own process, but you don't want to miss out. You don't want to miss out on the moment because it's a really cool thing to give these talks. Talk Universe, one of the great things about getting accepted is, all of the things that Sarah mentioned. But one of the things that often I forget to mention is it's great networking with the other people who are also selected to apply to give a talk. And you can really connect with people. Now, some people, are kind of in the zone. You leave them alone. You don't get in their space. And other people are, usually the more seasoned professional speakers who are a little bit more used to it. There's a time and a place, and you can really connect with them and continue and extend the conversation. And it's just really a wonderful thing. It's a benefit that is often very much overlooked. Sarah, what was the most painful part for you to cut out of the talk that we're talking about, or even other talks as well?
Okay, so I don't think I have an answer for that, but I'm going to reframe it a little bit because I think this will be helpful to the listeners. Is that in all of my talks that I've given, I write the first version out. And the most painful part is, I don't even think it's painful. It's like this, I know it's going to make me better, but I have two people that I share my talks with. And it's the moment that I send it because I know it's going to get torn apart. I know it is. And they're going to call me out on all my stuff, on these little tactics that I have in my talking. And they're going to they're going to keep inviting me to be more and more authentic in my writing. And it always feels just a little like you hit send and it's like, okay.
Oh, you know, it's coming. You know, it's coming.
Out. And then you're kind of refreshing. And then you have to realize everybody has a whole other life going on. It's not about you all the time. Even though you're like, didn't you get my TED draft? Don't you want to read it right this second? And they're like, I have a life. But it's my brother, Matthew, and my friend, Annabelle. And I know obviously my brother because he's my brother, and my friend, Annabelle, we met when I was working in film and television, and we've stayed very good friends, but I send it to both of them, all the speeches that I give and that are TED related. And they just love me so much that they edit it so much.
Oh, the little red pen comes out and everything else. No, so really what I hear, you answer the question brilliantly because you have such a respect for the process that this is part of your process and you submit it to other people knowing that it's going to get cut and it's going to be painful. And you do that. And those of us that are less prepared, less aware of the process, less aware of what it's like to actually go out in real time, be blinded by the light and maybe have our lines, maybe not, and whatnot. That's where the revision happens. So you've got such a preemptive revision cycle that that's where the pain happens.
It's because I really, really respect the audience.
Yeah.
I really want to bring value to the audience, and I don't want it to be about me. And sometimes in your first drafts, it's a lot about you, and it's a lot about your agenda and kind of what you want people to know about you or your businesses. And it's really great to have people come back and say, but no one cares.
So my last question for you, I don't ask this to a lot of people, but I love that you mention, it's not about us. And for a lot of I watch a lot of talks, you watch a lot of talks. It's real easy for the talk to be about us, even after we got accepted. And for us to go up there and kind of take that trust and still make it a little bit more about us through just plain ignorance that you see a lot of times, or just egocentrism. So how do we not do this? Because you've done this 3 times and you're guarding against that with your first draft with other people. How else do you guard against that? And where's that line?
Well, for sure, you shouldn't be talking about your business. I mean, I can't get over how many people are advertising a book or
it's pretty amazing.
A company. I'm just like, it's supposed to be about ideas worth spreading, and it's not supposed to be about your book worth getting on the New York Times.
It amazes me that a lot of those get approved. Because that's always the threat. I mean, I got the threat, it's like, you probably got the threat. Hey, if you make this, they won't approve it. And a lot of times it does slip through, and it shouldn't.
It does. And that feels very salesy. And I don't watch those talks. And I've even been at speaking at events where those talks have been allowed. And it's just really off-putting to me. I feel like there's plenty of spaces in the speaking circuit that we can do that. But I just feel like we should really respect the platform of TED. In all of its ways, like the TEDx Salon, the TEDx, TED itself. I just think, I think if you have to you get to have a freedom around your words, that it's supposed to be what helps. If your mission is, I want to bring value to people, and people are reading your drafts and they're saying that something's not valuable, I recommend not being defensive about it. Because you can go write a blog post about the things that you want to talk about, or you can go do a speech somewhere else about that. But if it's an idea worth spreading and it's a concept worth spreading, people want to, in the audience, in the TEDx audience, they want to feel like they're getting something from you that's making them feel less alone and making them feel valued and making them feel heard. And if you talk about yourself the whole time, they can't make the connections as easily as if when you talk about concepts and ideas and you share your own heart and you're vulnerable. I mean, I talk more about, if you listened to all 3 of my talks, you'd be like, wow, she kind of has some issues. Well, yeah, I mean, I also have some success too, but I have worked through a lot of things, and I find that the more we feel less alone, the better we are as human beings. And I'm willing to share some embarrassing things because it'll hopefully make somebody else not feel so alone.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation, this Blitz round with Sarah Hernholm. She is the author of the book, 11 Tips for Doing Wit. which is about to be released in 2019. And her talk is called From Victim to Victor. If you go to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com, we will have a link where you can watch that one. We'll have a link to her other ones as well in there. And we'll have a link to her website, which is called doingwit.org. Doingwit.org. And we'll be back with Sarah Hernholm in just a moment for the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with Sarah Hernholm. It is time for the final word of advice.
My advice would be, well, I'm gonna just kind of compile a few things. Some of the things that I live by. One would be to do whatever it takes. And by that, I mean doing whatever it takes to make the world a better place and start with you first. Because when you do the work on yourself, you are able to put the oxygen mask on first, and then you're able to serve other people. A lot of times people kind of go out, especially women, and they just want to serve and serve and give and give and give, and they're not taking care of themselves. And so I say there's no prize for being a martyr. There's no prize for being run down and too busy. So take care of yourself first so that you can serve people on an even greater scale. And one of the only quote that I have in my office is there's always enough time to do the right thing. And that comes from my dad. And he had to tell me that a lot growing up. So that's probably why it stuck with me. And now it guides a lot of what I do. We don't cut corners at WIT. I don't cut corners in my life because there's always enough time to do the right thing.
Sarah Hernholm, thank you so much for carving out time to share your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.